What's up, you guys? Kellen Killing for Company. So today is a little bit of a system update, and what I wanted to do, the goal for this is just go through the things that I've made some upgrades to in my system recently. The audio file and metalhead video got a whole lot of response. So first off, thank you for everyone who watched, commented. If you made a video of your own, that's awesome. I kind of want to keep that to be, well, it will be like an additional aspect of this channel. I don't want it to be like the main thing, but I'll touch base with it every once in a while. And since I last made that video sometime in December, November, I've made some upgrades to my system, so I wanted to go through those with you today. The other thing I wanted to do was kind of say, in the future, look for a conversation surrounding hi-fi with myself and S. Craig Zoller. We did the end of year series. We put together some video, like a conversation, because he has a background in the world of mastering specifically for film. But he's, had some interesting points of view on hi-fi and how it relates to him. And then I also would like to get a stream potentially with Depeche Commode in the future. We may have some additional people who jump in for that conversation. It would just be a live stream where we talk about our favorite records that we use specifically for hi-fi purposes. So looking for specific aspects on a record that you would like to be optimized with your setup, maybe like moments or specific qualities that you think are important to you. So we'd grab a handful of records and talk about them. And it would just, outside of that, we'll probably have some more general topics of conversation surrounding a lot of the things that I covered in that audiophile metalhead thing, regarding things that we kind of running against as collectors and also people who enjoy audio. So what I have for you right now is I'm just going to go through my update. Now, the way I shot this was I kind of slowed down and took some separate sort of close-up shots. I was having a difficult time getting like my microphone, which is kind of directional, when I would flip around and look at a specific aspect to my hi-fi system. So I kind of did this in pieces. So I'll kind of take a cutaway to parts of my system and then talk about them while you look at them, and I'll just kind of talk over it, sort of deal. So the upgrades I made to my system here. So the first one is I made a substantial update in terms of the STYLUS. I had for the previous one that came stock with my Fluence turntable was this Ortophon Blue. And it's actually a pretty good, like, given like the level of turntable I picked up, it's a pretty good stylus and cartridge. It is I believe the title, the kind of elliptical, sort of a nude elliptical diamond on this. And it's a very detailed stylus, which worked well. Like, I, at the time of my Cambridge integrated, it cleaned up a lot of the phono stage sort of blurriness. So you got a level of like clarity that was nice to get at an entry-level moving magnet cartridge. But I made the upgrade from in the 2M series here in the blue. I wanted to go to the black, which requires a different cartridge as well as it's a connected different stylus. So what I get in the black not only is an upgraded cartridge, but the stylus, the diamond is a Shibata stylus, and I'll show like a little photo of what that looks like. But my problem with this blue, in terms of its sonic characteristics with my records, my metal records, was it tended to be a little bit mid and treble focused. It did not have a lot of the like, not only lower sort of range, meaning the bass performance wasn't great, but it also didn't have the kind of like impact that I wanted. So even if you got some degree of like lower octave performance, it did not have the same sort of like smack or slam that you want from kick drums or bass guitar or major dynamic swings that sort of steer you towards like a greater bass performance. I don't, it's not like that all of metal is bass focused necessarily. I don't want to get too far into that conversation, but the tonal balance was off for me. So with the black, what I got was not only like more authority in those lower octaves, but a greater sort of dynamic impact. So with that sort of bass authority comes as a consequence also greater dynamic swings and range. Perfect for metal, right? Like if you like a sound that's a bit more mid and treble focused, you know, you like those like upper register trebles, hyper details, the blue would still be a great entry level cartridge in a moving magnet system, but the black is a dramatic step up, perfect for metal. It has all that authority without being warm or mushy or soft. Like I realize that I just don't like a darker or warm sound alone, right? I need a level of clarity and impact and detail to go along with it. If it's too warm, it kind of sounds mushy, and which does not work for me for metal. I need a little bit more like tactile, sharp edge to my sound. So that's something that this 2M Black gave to me. I'm super pleased with it. My vinyl records have sounded so much better, and there's a couple of reasons for that, but in terms of the STYLUS upgrade from this blue to the black, super happy. So that's sort of the phono stage or vinyl major upgrade that I have made since my last sort of room tour video. Since after that, let's talk about the digital stage of this. So I previously had just had my Rotel Tribute, which is a great CD player, but I was using the internal DAC or digital to analog converter that was inside of that CD player. I since have upgraded to a Geshelli Labs J2. They have a couple different versions of it. I chose the AKM DAC or the chipset, the AKM chipset for that. They also offer a ESA Sabre version. I went for the AKM. Once again, it's an interesting issue. Like what I had a problem with the Rotel was it didn't have the same sort of mid to treble focus that the 2M Blue did. The Rotel actually offered a little bit more of that dynamic swing. It just lacked weight. So the instruments, the body to the instruments did not have the same sort of like timbre or gravity that you want from a metal record. It's an example of I needed to take an incremental step towards something that sounded a little bit heavier, slightly warmer than what the chip or the DAC in the Rotel was giving me. And the J2 was a dramatic step up in terms of giving me a little bit more bottom end to that sound. So I seem to be doing something incremental steps where I initially pursued a lot of detail retrieval, incredible amount of clarity to my system initially, and have made sort of incremental steps to improve not just the bottom end performance, but doing so in which I'm not sacrificing a lot of the other elements that I want to keep intact. So I'm very happy with my Rotel and with the Fluence turntable, but I needed to make improvements in terms of the analog and digital conversion happening. All right, let me flip the tape that we're listening to. We'll get that to in a second. So where was I? After the digital upgrade, so we have a stylus upgrade, a DAC upgrade, and I made the biggest thing that I did to my system. If you remember that room tour video, I talked about how the biggest bottleneck that I felt that existed in my system was my integrated amplifier. So I had a Cambridge AXR 85, which was, good entry level, good place to begin for me. But it was too warm, soft, mushy, lush. It did something that I found to be problematic, was it just sort of softened all of the sound. One of my biggest fears when I was getting into purchasing something for my own was I was afraid that my music was going to be so distorted, that I needed something to soften the blow, and I sort of overcompensated with that Cambridge AXR. It was just too easygoing, and it did not have the same kind of punch that I needed. So I made an upgrade, probably the biggest upgrade in my system. I moved from that Cambridge AXR 85 to a Rogue Sphinx V3. So the Rogue is a company out of Utah, and it is a hybrid design integrated amplifier. So on the front end of the amplifier, you can kind of see these vacuum tubes. If I kind of pan over the top of the integrated, they have a vent on the top panel, and you can see that there's two 12AU7 vacuum tubes that are placed on the pre-amplification stage of this integrated amplifier. So they handle the initial sort of pre-amplification, and then for those who don't know, we'll get into typology with the amplifier potentially in the stream, but vacuum tubes are class A. That's the kind of amp classification they fall under, and then that's the hybrid design component of the Rogue, is it moves from the vacuum tubes in a class A to a class D power amplification stage. So the trade-off tends to be that class A, in this case the vacuum tubes, have an incredibly natural, meaning like the timbre of instruments, a lot of the textual components that you find feel or sound incredibly natural in Class A, but they consume a lot of energy. There's often a lot of heat, and in order to gain a lot of watts in Class A, it's usually these giant sort of Herculean electronic boxes. So they're super heavy, super large. They aren't energy efficient. So this integrated only uses them in Class A. That Class A, in the pre-amplification stage, it feeds then a Class D power amplification stage, where the strengths in Class D tend to be incredible dynamics. They're energy efficient. In a small amount of space, you can get a large amount of wattage, but the problems tend to be that it sounds really dry and clinical, like all those subtle elements that you would find within an instrument that people into audio, or anyone who cares about like the way an instrument is supposed to sound, you get interested in. Class D tends to truncate or amputate some aspect of that sound off, and it just loses a little bit of its charisma and sort of organic, so to speak, sensation or sound. So this is an interesting combination of opposing strengths that find its way into this hybrid design of this amplifier. I'm incredibly pleased with it. It captures everything that I want to in metal music specifically. I don't feel it's so brittle and harsh, but I get all the power and incredible amount of pacing, rhythm. Audiophiles use this term Pratt, pacing, rhythm, and timing. Whether you believe in it or not, I just love how much energy is in this amp relative to the one I had previously. And then the other part I would say is the phono stage. I'm just using the stock phono stage on this amp, but coming from where I was previously, this phono stage is awesome. I mean, I don't know how much I would have to spend in order to improve it, but between the upgraded STYLUS and the upgraded phono stage inside of this Rogue Sphinx, I'm incredibly pleased with the vinyl playback. So it works super well for all those analog geeks out there, and in terms of my metal listening and curtailing sort of an amplifier to have a sonic signature specific to the kind of records I listen to, I could not be happier with this choice. I'm fully invested in kind of like following Rogue up the chain to see what they can offer, because I think they do rock and metal music incredibly well and also speak to analog listeners specifically. So just because the phono stage is awesome in this integrated. Moving from an incredibly, that's like the biggest thing I wanted to improve. But something that was really missing was a dedicated cassette deck. So I got a cassette deck, an Onkyo cassette deck from eBay. The model name escapes me at the moment, but it's kind of a cool vintage cassette deck with some UV meters. We're currently listening to it and play in the background here. This is Bloodspell, Cloaked in Burning Light, I think from 2019. Anyway, it's on Caligari Records, but that is playing right now in the background as I talk to you off the Onkyo cassette deck. And yeah, to have a dedicated cassette deck is great. It sort of matches the silver aesthetic that I've got going. I probably should take it serviced to get it serviced here to have it sort of optimal listening, but I've been really pleased with it. And you know, it's also tape cassette deck listening, so it's got its own specific aesthetic, kind of like VHS, right? I think they're in similar worlds in terms of you appreciate them for the aesthetic, and it's not really for the incredibly nerdy, modern, objectively non-distorted audiophile, right? More and more that I get into this hobby, the more and more I realize I tend to associate sound or use them with the same kind of superlatives or individuality and preference that I would like food or art. So much of it is not about like trying to, for me personally, objectivity and scientific sort of perfection as much as it is sort of like an individual amount of pleasure that I get out of it. So we got the STYLUS upgrade, the DAC upgrade, the integrated upgrade, a cassette deck, and lastly I kind of wanted to talk about my speaker setup and stand. One of the things that the biggest, at this point, bottleneck now that I've made these kind of upgrades to my system is clearly in the speakers. The speakers need to be upgraded in order to sort of up their game to match the rest of the system. I'm still very happy. I have some Q Acoustic 3030i. They're doing great, and down the road, it's gonna be fun to buy a new pair of speakers. That'll be so cool when I get the opportunity to, but right now, I'm so pleased with them. But what I did to upgrade their performance, I picked up some isoacoustic pucks. So they're these little black sort of rubber isolation pucks that sit. There's 4 of them underneath the speaker, and they help to sort of couple the speaker to the stand and eliminate any sort of resonances or instability that the speaker would create through vibration that the stand would not be able to sort of account for. That kind of imbalance or instability leads to distortion in the sound. And what I felt like the pucks contributed to was altogether a greater sense of clarity and cohesiveness and impact with the sound. So, you know, a lot of when I would hear like bass drum and kicks, bass drum or bass guitar, anything that was like a little bit blurred, you could hear sort of the distinct sort of percussive nature of them a bit more with the pucks. And then on top of that, with the stands, I filled in the stands with sand. So there's these 4 pillars that make up sort of the length or neck of the stand, if you will. And each of them I completely filled with sand. So it added greater weight to the stand, and then also absorbs a little bit of that sort of any sort of resonant shaking that you would get inside of the stand through the speakers. All of that is meant to sort of ground the speaker a little bit more and hopefully make the drivers a bit more pistonic, meaning they just move back to full front. They don't, any kind of shaking that the speaker would have, you would eliminate that kind of direct translation in sound. It's never perfect, but if you have a greater sort of foundation for the speaker to sort of hold on to, you get greater clarity in terms of how it's voicing and controlling the drivers. So, and you eliminate the distortion there. That's really, I haven't bought any new speakers or anything like that, but I've improved my speaker performance by sort of improving the stands that they're resting on. I've got the speakers also positioned. I did some measuring to try and find like the equilateral triangle in the room, so they're distanced appropriately from myself, between one another, and the size of the room where I'm seated when I'm listening. So we've got them kind of taped to the floor in the correct place. All of that has gone into like my system upgrade here. So I think that really rounds out a lot of the things that I've done for my audio system, and hopefully I'll be able to talk about this a bit more in depth with some other people. Look for a stream happening between myself, potentially Depeche Commode, and some other guests in the near future. I'll be sure to shout out as soon as I get that sort of nailed down with a time for you guys to join in the conversation. We'll probably do a live stream. My tape is over. Blood spell is done. I've gone through all of my rig. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.